Hi, in this video we'll be discussing how to use the Tablix control in Publisher Page Designer. This control is very similar to Excel pivots in that you can have columns going across and various groups going down. With the Tablix control you'll be able to run the reports in the web and save them as PDF or as HTML. You can also create links on the cells. For example, if I click on this cell here, I can drill through to another report and see the transactions behind that cell. So here are the transactions. In this training video we'll look at how we can create this report, and towards the end we'll also look at how we can create actions where we can jump to and pass through parameters to other reports. Let's have a look at the examples now, starting with the PDF report. So this is Publisher, and we have a query that's defined against a system called SAP Business One. We have a number of filters up the top here, which you can see above the report, and here we have our outputs. If we preview the report, you can see it looks very similar to what's in the Tablix. To keep this report simple, I've only selected a few columns, which is the account name, the period, and the amount. So what we want to do in the Tablix is have the periods going across the columns and the accounts going down. We could do this report using dynamic outputs, but for this example we want to use the Page Designer. So after creating the query, we then move to the Page Designer and open that up. So here's the example that's already completed. I've used colors in the Tablix control just to indicate the different sections that we're working with, and if we preview that you'll see that it looks very similar to the PDF in the web channel. Down the side we have the controls, and down the bottom you can find the Tablix control. I'm using version 4.7, so the control appears as Tablix. In older versions you will see it as Matrix, but the functionality is still the same. Okay, let's have a look at the Tablix and see how we've placed the data in this control. So you can see as I'm clicking on the control we have drop downs, and this allows us to bind the data from our data set into the Tablix control. So here is our query, and there are our columns, and you can see that these have been placed into different sections. So here we have our total section and our total at the bottom. As for the drill throughs, if we have a look at the property grid, you can see that there is a action that's associated with the cells. In this case, what we've done is we've created a jump to URL action, and this is drilling through to another report, and when it drills through it's passing the various parameters to that report. So we're taking the account and the period, etc., and the company and passing it to a report called Tablix drill. The action property can be placed on just the cells that you want to place drill throughs on. So we can understand all the steps involved in creating this Tablix, what I'll do now is delete the control and rebuild it from scratch. So here we've got our title up the top, and there's our data set. Let's drag out the Tablix control and drop it onto the work area. Okay, what we'll do is put a title at the top called Accounts in the top right hand corner, and under the Accounts column let's select the account name. Next we'll move to the periods. So here we'll drop in the period, and under the period we'll use the amount. The formatting of the amount can be set in the property grid, so I'm just going to go to formatting, and if I want no decimal places I can type in N0. If you need to customize the format you can use the drop down and select from the list to customize the format. In the preview you can see that we've got the basics of the report starting already. Let's go back now to the design and adjust the column width to give the account more room, And what we'll do is we'll set the color for this column just so we can distinguish from the periods. So if I come across to the property grid, I can then select a color from the list. In this case, I'll make it blue. And for the periods, coral and a gray for the amount area. Okay, let's preview that again. And you can see now that we can better distinguish the different areas of the report. Next, what I'll do is add a total on the right side and along the bottom. So let's go back to the design, come up to the periods, and as we come up to the periods, you can see there's a plus symbol that appears where we can insert another column. If we click on that, and in here we can type in total, and from the drop down list select amount again. Let's preview this. You can see the totals have been done, but the formatting hasn't been inherited from the previous column. So we'll go back and set the formatting and also add the total along the bottom. Again, I'm going to use N0 for no decimal places, and we'll set the color. I'm going to make the totals a yellow, and for the totals at the bottom, what I'll do is I'll click on the account name, and while I'm doing that, I'm getting another plus symbol. So here I can click on the plus, and below accounts I can enter the total again. And here we'll sum the amounts and also sum the amounts for the total as well. What I'll do now is multi-select all the amounts and set the format to N0. In this way I can bulk change the formatting details. And then I'll select the bottom and change the color as well. Okay, let's preview the report. I can do a lot more work on the formatting, but basically the report's starting to come together. Okay, we need to do some more work on adding borders and adjusting the column widths, and then after that we can move on to the click on the cell and drill through to another report. To create borders, what I can do is multi-select the various cells and then come down to the border style and then select solid from there. Let's preview the report again, and you can see now we've got our borders around the cells. Next, I'll look at how I can adjust the alignment on some of these labels across the top, and then we'll add an extra line up the top that says periods. So let's come to the accounts label, and in the property grid what we'll do is increase the font size, make that 12 and bold, and then there's another property called text alignment. We can set that to center and the vertical alignment to middle. Next, I'll multi-select various cells and hold down the control key, and if I come to text align, I can set that to center, and the vertical align I can set to middle. And then for the numbers, I'll set those to text align right and vertical align middle. Let's preview the report now, and you can see the report's looking a lot cleaner now, and we can move on to putting the label up the top which says periods just above this orange section. To add the period above the accounts row, what I'll do is I'll select the row, right click, and then select the insert row menu, and then outside group above, and at the top I can then type in periods. You can see the labels just appeared above the periods going across the columns, and just as before we can add a color to the background. Okay, we're ready to move on to the drill through, and in the case of the drill through, what we want to do is take the account name and the period and the current company and pass it through to another report. But before we can do that, let's have a look at the drill through report and the filter values that are waiting on that report. So I'm just going to close this report and move across now to the drill through report. As before, it has a query. The query looks very similar to the Tablix report because it's taking the basic filter parameters and then showing the transactions. In this case, it's showing the journal numbers and the posting dates for the accounts. Let's have a look at the data, and you can see we're adding more details. We're showing the period and then the posting date, the journal, and the amount. Now, if we've passed through the filters correctly from the Tablix control into this filter area here, we should get it balancing to the same number. And this is done by overriding these filter values here. If we have a look at the company and right click on it and select change name, you can see the name for this filter. What's going to happen is the Tablix control is going to use the name of the filter and assign it an alternative value. In this case, it's OEC companies, but when we drill through from this control, we're going to pass in whatever we've selected up here through to this filter value. And the same is going to be done for the period and the account name. If we look at the period, the filter name is called period, and then for the account, it's called account. Now, depending on where we select in the Tablix control, we'll either get a single period, an account, but if we select on the total, what we'll get is all the periods for that account. And if we select at the bottom, all the accounts for that period. Let's have a look at the total for raw materials. So I'm holding down the control key so that it opens in a new tab, and here's the report that we're just looking at now, and we've got subtotals by period. If we go to the last page, there's our total, and up the top here we've got the filter values that were passed in. So in this case we're passing the company, and the period is from period 1 to 4, and the account is account name raw materials. If I was to select just the period 1 column, the period would be 1 to 1. Let's try this one more time, and this time select the total at the bottom, and we'll see what happens. So I selected the column period 1, and you can see that period 1 has been passed through, and there's our accounts from goods to VAT. And in this case it all balances to 0. Let's have a closer look now at the action jump to URL and how this URL was created. We're going back to our report now, and we'll go back to the Page Designer and continue the design. This area here is just asking us what seed values we'd like to apply to the report when we're designing it. So here's our Tablix control, and if we have a look at the property grid, currently we have no actions applied, so it's set to none. If we click on the lookup button, you can see that we can define a jump to URL parameter. Let's select that, and in the drop-down list we can define an expression. So the expression is going to take various parameters and build up the URL that feeds that drill through report that we saw earlier. If we have a look at the parameters list, you can see that Sharperlight has provided a number of useful parameters. For example, here is the URL address for the web service, and here is the currently selected company filter value. But not all the values that we're looking for are in this list. Some of them are embedded in the Tablix control. For these, we would look at the fields dataset. So here we've got access to the current period and the account name. So if I double click on that, that would be the account name. So all these elements are combined together to create a URL address. I've already prepared a URL address, and here it is here. Have a look at how it's made up. The first parameter is getting the address for the web service. So let's have a look up here, and if we look at the address for this report, it is MD Service 1 REST. So that first parameter is getting this address here, and then after that we can add the name of the report, and then the filter values. So the filter values would be, for example, FLT for filter, company equals, and then whatever the value is, and then the account equals, etc. So let's have a look at this example again. So here we have our URL address, then we have the name of the report that we're drilling through to, and then we have the names of the filters and the parameters that we want to set them to. For example, company equals, and then whatever the current company filter value is. As for the account name, we're getting it from that query dataset, and because there's a to and a from range for account names, what we're doing is setting the from account name and the to, so it has underscore to on the filter name. You notice that for the account to, we're using the last account. The reason why we're doing this is because when we select this cell, for example, it's just going to be goods received. But if we clicked on the bottom, we would have all the accounts in the range. So it would have the current account that we're on and the last account that we're on. And the same for periods. So here the period would be 004 and the last value would be 004, but on the total it'll be 001 to 004 because we're using the last command. So this is why we're using last, so that we can also drill through on the totals. If you're not drilling through on totals, you wouldn't need to put this in. Okay, let's talk about the if statement at the top here. So if you look at the matrix, there are some cells that have nothing in them at all. So what we're saying is if the amount is nothing, then do nothing at all. Provide no URL address for the drill through. Otherwise, do this. So if we were to click on this blank space here, nothing would happen. That's why we have the if statement. Alright, so let's just take this example here and we'll put it into the designer. We'll come back to our report, and in our jump to URL setting, we'll put in equals and then the formula, which is built up by selecting the correct fields from these parameters and fields list. Press OK and OK. If we preview the report and click on the cell, the action will kick in, and you can see here I need to sign in, and here's our drill through report. Let's see what parameters have been passed in by just opening up the filter section. You can see that it's overridden the company correctly, and it's used period 1 to period 1, and we're on goods received. Let's try another one in the list. Let's try raw materials and period 2. So I'm clicking on that. Now in this drill through report, I have asked that it collapse the filter area, so I'm just opening that up, and indeed we have period 2 and raw materials pass through. If we didn't pass these filter values through correctly, you would see that these would have the original default values in them. So in this way we can work out if we've got the correct names set in the URL address to override these filters. And also we can see that the balance is matching what's appearing in the report. Okay, what I'll do now is apply the same action on the totals. So this total on the far right, we go to the property grid, change the action from none to jump to URL, set the expression, and we'll paste that in. After that we can come down to the totals at the bottom and change those as well. I'm deliberately not setting the grand total on the bottom row because I think there'll just be too many transactions appearing in the drill through. Okay, let's preview that and we'll test our totals this time. I'll go to the period total for raw materials and click on that, and we can confirm the filter criteria, and yes, we have all the periods for raw materials. Let's press close now and apply, and then we'll get our link to our report by going to the links tab, and we'll put that into the browser. There's a few more steps that we need to apply when working with drill through links. You can see that in the Tablix control, there's some labels that are appearing where there should be blank numbers. So we need to fix this up. This occurs when you have jump to URL addresses on the cells. So we need to take control over that formatting and set these to blank. Let's go back to our design. If we preview this, you can see that they are blank here, but when rendering to HTML or PDF, we have those labels appear. So we need to come back into the designer. We'll move to the center of the Tablix control where we have the sum on the amount, and let's have a look at the value here. So at the moment there's a expression, and the expression is saying sum the amount. Now occasionally these amounts are going to be nothing, and when they're nothing, those jump through URL addresses are coming through. So we need to explicitly set this to blank when it's nothing. For that reason, let's change the expression to something like this. So again, we're using an if statement, and what it's saying is if the sum is nothing, we'd like to set it to blank, otherwise show the sum. And this will deal with those artifacts that are appearing in the Tablix control. So I'll copy that and paste it in here, and let's save the report and refresh it in the web. You can see now that the blanks are indeed coming out as blanks, and if we click on this cell here, just as we did in the designer, we should drill through to the drill through report while passing in the parameters. What I'll do now is explain the difference between HTML reports and PDF reports. You can see that I can click on a PDF report and do a drill through, and if I save the report as HTML, it does look somewhat different, but the same sort of actions can be done. So here we click on a cell and it opens up the drill through report. However, there are some differences in the way that URL address was built up. Let's have a look at the differences. So when it's a HTML report, basically what's going to happen is if we use the same format as what we used in the PDF, what it will do is open up the drill through over the top of this report. So you'll lose your original starting report. What we really want is to be able to click on the cell and not have the original report replaced, but to jump into a new tab. To make this happen, the expression that was applied to the action is slightly different. In the case of PDF, this expression was used. You can see that it's just building up the URL address with the if statement at the top. But for opening up a HTML report in a new tab, what we need to do is add a bit of additional code to open in a new window. And this is done with JavaScript. If you're not sure what JavaScript is, you can use this as a template. So in the case of rendering as HTML, if we come back to our report, and currently it's set to render as PDF, we would set it to render as HTML. In fact, we already have an example of that just here. Let's have a look at this. So there's our options, render as HTML, and the design for this would use the second expression template. And what it's doing is using a bit of JavaScript to open in a new window, and then it's passing the exact same parameters through to it. And then this underscore blank ensures that it opens in a new tab. So this is standard JavaScript. Unfortunately, this JavaScript will not work if you're using a PDF output file format. So let's have a look at the HTML version, and we come down to the jump to URL action and we edit that. You'll see that it's using the JavaScript version, and here it is here. These expressions will be placed into an article along with this video, so that if you're not sure how to create this syntax yourself, all you need to worry about is the name of these filters the report that you're drilling through to, and then the correct parameters to pass through. Some more details about PDFs. You can see that this PDF is in the web page, and if we click on the links, it'll drill through to a new web page with the details behind that cell. If we were to save this PDF to our file system, or we were to email them out, you could still click on these links, but you would need access to this URL address, and you would also need to have a valid account on that system for the drill throughs to work. This has been a quick overview of how to use the Tablix control in Page Designer Publisher, and also how to create drill throughs on Page Designer reports.